So today I'm here with Paul Schiefer, who runs Amy's Kitchen. You've been the CEO for the last couple of months, I guess, but you've been here for 19 years,
Yes.
which is exciting. And Amy's obviously produces organic frozen meals. Well, I'm super excited to have this conversation. You were actually the very first partner for Chef, so I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here and share some of our story and talk about our partnership.
Cool. Well, I guess I'd love to just hear about the story of Amy's, right? So, the company's been around for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of hear the story. They started off, Andy and Rachel, making kind of individual pot pies. How did it kind of evolve from there?
Sure. It's a really beautiful story. And it, next year's our 40th year. So we've been doing this a long time. It's actually on the back of the box, but I'll give you the more full story. Andy and Rachel have always been real foodies. Rachel had an organic garden growing up. She always cooked really delicious organic meals for Andy and for herself. And during her pregnancy with Amy, she, unfortunately, towards the tail end of the pregnancy, had to go on to bed rest, and it required Andy to start cooking for the family. Andy is a wonderful entrepreneur. He knows good food, but I wouldn't say cooking is his strongest suit. So he quickly realized that I might not be the right cook for the family, and he started looking for meal solutions he could bring home, and he bought quite a bit of the different frozen food meals he could find at the time. And I think as he tried to eat them and saw the ingredients that he didn't quite recognize on the back of the label, and maybe a taste and quality proposition that was far away from the food he enjoyed from Rachel, he became inspired that there must be more people like the two of them who lived really busy lives but wanted to eat delicious food, and became inspired to start a food company. And I have to give it to them, quite brave. Have their first child and start a company at the same time.
Yes.
But I think what was really interesting, because they weren't traditional food CPG folks by background, they really thought about building a company in a way around their philosophy to food, which is, for Rachel, incredibly important. And as she thought about products I want to sell, they were really an extension of the products she would serve her closest friends and family across her own dining table. And so they built a really creative way of building a food company. And so that was the beginning.
And was it always vegetarian, non-GMO from day one, or how did that all evolve?
Yeah, so I would say vegetarian from day one. That's how they personally ate. And again, a lot of Amy's was a reflection of their own values around food. So they were vegetarians. They never made that the central point. It just happened to be. The first product was a vegetable pot pie that actually was partially developed by Rachel's mother, Eleanor, but then two other family friends contributed the dough and some of the other pieces around it. Organic was an interesting one. This was 1987, so actually both vegetarian and organic food back at that time were very novel. I would say most people you would talk to be like, you'd be quite crazy to start a vegetarian organic food company. But for Rachel, the vegetarian was the way they ate, and organic was something she had grown up with. And for Andy, he wasn't as close to it, but when he started thinking about what kind of food company did he want to create, he went out and got curious, and he saw some farming communities in the Central Valley and Salinas area, and just started understanding the negative role of these pesticides in community health. And they were creating cancer clusters. They were, in his mind, carcinogenic, and he just felt like, why build a food company where I'm going to put so much care into these products to give to people I care about? Why would I put that type of agriculture into my food? So it wasn't really a marketing claim. For him, it was more of an extension of their values. And now 40 years later, it's kind of wild that organic's nearly an $80 billion industry. It's sort of commonly known, and certainly plant-based vegetarian food has also grown significantly since the founding.
And I have to imagine, scaling to over those 40 years, you're in 30 countries. It's an insane growth. And I have to imagine at some point, somebody was like, hey, guys, should we do something else? Should we expand into non-vegetarian and expand the TAM, expand the market? And how have you been able to stay core to your values over those years?
Sure. Well, it's first of all, it helps to be a family-owned and operated business. So, we didn't have outside financial stakeholders who were pushing us to do things that were contrary to their values. I would also argue that we could barely keep up with the growth we had, so we didn't have to do a whole lot more. You're absolutely right. Starting from a humble pot pie that was sold in a couple natural food stores in the Bay Area. Today we're in 56,000 grocery stores across the country, nearly 300 products that we make, and yet I would still say every one of them is an individual creation made with a similar intention to that first pot pie. But as far as growth, we started with these frozen meals, frozen pot pies. for Andy, he went out and he's like, well, what's really popular in the frozen aisle? And we saw mac and cheese, vegetable lasagna. And so in many ways, we took kind of what was common in the category. We just made a much tastier, better, healthier, more nutritious version of it. So that was sort of the first phase of growth. It was really these classic, traditional comfort foods.
Yeah.
But I think over time, we learned that a really novel way of making food could extend into other areas. And so we got into frozen pizzas and built a whole bakery and really unique system of making long fermented dough. We got into canned soup, which was totally out of the freezer, different part of the grocery store. And then from there, pasta sauces and salsas and canned beans. We got into a whole burrito line and then a gluten-free burrito line and started exploring global flavors. And we've also had things we've explored, desserts and candy that we've been in and now we're not in anymore. So I think part of Amy's has always been very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Also very curious. Like, what are people wanting to eat that they can't find a great quality version of easily? And that's been often the inspiration to try something new. But back to that organic and vegetarian foundation. We actually, when we became a B Corp, we embedded those things into our very public benefit charter. And we recognize that those are sort of what we call founders' principles. They're really important, as is treating people with deep care and extending that to our suppliers and to the people who eat our food. And we felt we never would want to be a company that couldn't commit to doing those things with excellence every day.
So the B Corp thing is actually interesting too. Like, what inspired you all to do that?
Well, it's an interesting one. I've had many roles over my now almost 20 years at Amy's, including leading some of our sustainability, social and environmental impact work. And I actually had gone to Andy, our founder, with the idea of like, let's explore this B Corp certification. And Andy's first point was like, well, we've kind of been doing that for 35 years. Why do we need a label? A label for it? And I think in part he was right. I mean, we started a movement about creating a company with deeply embedded social environmental ethics well before there was a movement around it. But I think we also saw in B Corp a framework that could help us understand where we're doing well and also where there's opportunities to improve further. So from that level, that external third-party verification was really helpful. It also helped us support a movement that we really believe in, that capitalism and good can coexist. And B Corp became kind of a philosophy we could see in our own company that we could then participate in terms of a larger community.
Yeah. And I'm also curious, obviously today you guys do over $1 billion in annual sales, which is awesome. Like, was that growth kind of just like straight line up, like, hockey stick growth, or was it bumpy? Like, what did that growth look like?
Yeah, so there's many phases to that growth story. I mean, if you kind of, I can give you kind of the long view. In the early days, I mean, Amy sold primarily in those small natural food stores that were locally owned and operated. And we started with really a West Coast regional approach. Over time, companies like Whole Foods and others got into the game to really start expanding a more national view of what healthier eating, better for you eating could look like. And that was a critical growth phase for Amy's. It really helped us get into becoming more of a nationally known brand. But again, in that narrow, smaller natural food channel, which is really the core, the roots of Amy's in many ways. But there's been a couple phases like since then that have been meaningful, and one of our very early partners was Publix. And it's actually a really interesting story where Rachel and Andy were at a big trade show in Chicago, but one of the smallest vendors there, and they happened to meet some of the family members from the Publix ownership, and somehow they connected with just how absolutely different our food was than anything else on the market, and they took a kind of a bet on a small company out of the West Coast, and so once we got into Publix and performed really well with that store, it really opened up the door to a lot more of the conventional grocery trade, and from there we've even now Walmart, Target, Kroger, Albertsons, really all the big retailers carry a large part of Amy's, and in each of those eras, it's we've expanded categories and we've expanded channels, and they've helped support that growth. But I would say at the core of it, we've never not been a natural food company. At the very core, I mean, we often talk about our roots are natural, and while we've become a bigger company, and which has allowed us to feed more people good food and support more great farming across the country. And we've never wanted to become a mass market brand. We've always wanted to hold that kind of North Star there. So
I was listening to a little bit of a podcast with John Mackey, actually, the Whole Foods founder, and he was kind of talking about how in the early days, like Whole Foods was like, it was weird. It was like these guys out of Texas, like, what's the market for this, right? But obviously now everyone loves Whole Foods and it's respected. I'm curious, like in the early days for you guys, like, did you feel like a big pull from the market, or was it like kind of like Andy and Rachel, like let's go make this happen? It was kind of pushing onto the world, and they just happened to be right. That's what the world wanted.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think they definitely understood a need in a way that few others did.
Yeah.
But yet it's also like such a simple need, right? Like
Yeah.
human beings want to eat good food. I mean,
Yes.
it's rooted in our very DNA,
Yeah.
you know, and good food means something that you enjoy eating and something that you feel good about eating at the same time. And I think what probably set them apart is they took a very contrarian view of how to build a company to do it.
Yes.
I wouldn't argue anyone out there says like people don't want good food, right?
Correct.
It's not a very
Of course.
completely unique
Contrarian
insight, but to build a food company that
Yes.
could scale and grow and produce 1 million meals a day, but yet do it in a really unique and novel way, that's really, I think, their magic and their innovation, and to hold that true over 40 years.
And scale to multiple plants.
And I think then when people discovered that, because they really discovered it not because we marketed, because we've actually barely marketed it as a company. They mostly discovered it because they took a bet on a little bit of a unique looking package. And then when they experienced the meal, they're like, wow, this is really substantially better than what I would expect out of the frozen aisle. And, you know, and then I think in many cases they told their friends and their family who then experienced Amy's, and it really grew through word of mouth. And I would say really grew because we kept product quality at the very center of everything that we did.
Right. And I guess I'd be curious, like, you know, like I think some of the most interesting stories about like a new company is the early days when, you know, it is just a couple of founders kind of figuring it out. I mean, I guess like, how do you take that vision of like, hey, I want to build a global, or maybe not even global, just a bigger, like, I want to build a food company, to like getting their first kitchen and then getting their first plant and then hiring their staff, and how do they finance it? Like these early days, right?
Sure.
Like the crucible moments.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't speak to their whole lived truth.
Of course.
You know, though I was an intern in high school and college, so I have some early views of like the 90s, the earlier stages of Amy's.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of hard choices, and it comes with consequences. I mean, I don't think you create something the size of Amy's or really create any large company without, you know, putting a huge amount of yourself into it. I think what's interesting about Andy and Rachel is they didn't start this with a global ambition. It wasn't like an exit in mind or a valuation they were trying to achieve or, you know, it was really actually back to that extension of what Rachel felt was really important is that people deserve to eat really good food. It should be a human right. And we want to endeavor to create a company that can serve as many people as possible really good food. And then they work so hard to make that possible every day, you know, to keep costs in control so our food wasn't too expensive, to work on really novel ways of making food so that the quality was never compromised, to find and attract people who actually wanted to work in a little less traditional food company and were willing to do sometimes the harder path, but what we felt was a better path. And you know, when I mean harder, it's not, what I mean by that is really taking allowing more complexity into the system than a normal food company would allow for, right? Like, and that's probably the secret to Amy's is that we don't strip the creativity out of food. We find a way to keep the creativity and make a lot of food. And that's what I think is really, again, it's a novel business model. And that's where I think their sort of contrarian entrepreneurial way really unlocks something that had never been done this way before.
Yeah, and we're speaking like before we started recording here about like the unconventional approach, like you said. I mean, we've seen this at Chef when we partner with Amy's, right? Like, you know, a lot of food companies are all about throughput. How do we reduce cost? You know, obviously quality everyone wants, but it's not the top one. It's like more about output, revenue. It seems apparent after years of working with Amy's, the number one thing is quality. And maybe being private, to your point, has really been a big part of that, perhaps, right? Like you don't have external shareholders trying to maximize cash flows and things like that. But yeah, it's impressive that you've been able to kind of maintain that ethos. And I'm curious, like, if there's certain things you've been able to do, or the company's been able to do to like allow for that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly ownership and governance matter. I mean, that is made the condition of this easier. I think leaning into a bit of creativity in how we operate. I mean, and this, I would say even finding Chef, right? We were probably your first bigger customer. We found a small little startup in San Francisco doing a novel way of automating something that actually, when we saw it, we're like, wow, that might be part of the ticket. It doesn't require us to move the food to automation. It allows automation to make the food the way we want to make it, right? And it was a total like shift, and we took a risk, obviously, probably mutually, to try something different. And I think that's true with growers, with suppliers, with exotic recipes. I mean, we've
Yeah.
always leaned a bit into
Taking
the
bets.
creativity, experimentation, and in a controlled way, of course, but still not being caught up that just because everyone else does it that way, that's the only way to do it.
Right.
I think it's also about a business model change. I mean, Amy's has traditionally put a lot more money into the food than into the marketing and kind of branding side. And so sometimes it's also where you invest. And when you invest in quality and you invest in people who make good quality, it may mean you have less room to invest in other areas that traditionally a CPG company would. But I think in our case, we found a really successful model that overemphasized product quality and maybe underemphasized some of the other investment areas that a typical food brand would make in our industry.
What's awesome is like anyone who's ever eaten Amy's loves it, right? Like consumers love it, right? And they just keep on like raving about it. Like very few consumers rave about Conagra meals or what, but they rave about Amy's meals, right? Paul, I'd love to hear about your story. So, I mean, like you said, you started 19 years ago. Like, how did you even stumble upon Amy's? What prompted you to join? You had an internship, it seems like.
Yeah, so my father worked at Amy's when I was in high school, and he's actually Rachel's brother too. So there's a familial connection there, which is part of the reason. Though I hadn't really thought about the food industry, I had this opportunity to do high school internship at Amy's because he was working there full time, and so I was like, all right, I'll do this internship. And so my first summer I worked on a canning line, basically looking at the seam quality all summer. I did another summer working across kind of in the R&D kitchen around helping scale up different dough recipes. I did some internships in engineering, a few other areas. So I ended up doing this like 5 internships across high school and college in the business. So I had this really early view and memory when it was just one small plant. To be honest, like I didn't think the food industry was where I was going to spend a career, but after about 4.5 years of consulting work, where I think I spent about 330 days in a hotel a year, I was just kind of ready for something new, and I had this, opportunity to have a conversation with Andy, and he said, like, just come give it a shot. You know, you can try. I've got this internal consulting project management role we've been trying to fill. Like, it sort of blends a bit of what you were doing in your consulting work. You could try it here, and look, if it's not your thing, at least it moves you up to the Bay Area, and you can go see whatever you want to do from there. And so I was like, oh, well, it's kind of low risk. I knew I wanted to change. So I in my mind thought maybe 6 months or a year, and then I'll go, figure out what's next. And I would say in that first year, I just deeply fell in love with the business. I mean, I think it's really what got me. And a lot of that was around understanding organic farming better and what a unique thing it was doing for the soil. And I think the other part is that I personally love food. I love to cook. And I think as I really, this go around, as a little bit older and wiser, really understood how magical the unique way we made our food was. It just was, I didn't feel like I had to go seek another place of learning. There was so much to learn within this business about how we figured out to make this food in this way every single day. And so, a year turned into a couple of years, and now it's turned into 19 years. And I've been so fortunate to have been able to hold many roles across many levels in the organization, and really been able to see it literally from an intern level now to a CEO level. Yet I don't think the underlying thesis of really like feeling the work we do, no matter what the role, has always felt very important to me personally. Especially now that I've got 3 younger girls, and I think a lot about the world they're inheriting. I feel like Amy's can really be not just a solution to people's daily meal choices, but it can really be a solution to what capitalism and what businesses can do to create a better world. And that's kept me just so motivated and excited to continue this journey there.
I want to hear more about the Amy story, but to this point, like, are there other kind of companies that you think are kind of following in Amy's shoe steps? Like, Patagonia talks a lot about this, but are there other companies that inspire you or inspire Amy's as a company?
Yeah, there are many out there. I mean, I'm probably closest to the other organic food businesses. I'm on the board of the Organic Trade Association. We've done a lot of advocacy work and in that space around Farm Bill. And you think of like Lumberg Family Farms, are both a supplier and a partner to us. A great brand. I mean, family owned, and just Suzanne, the new CEO, is a good friend of mine. And just like we talk, like how much together we're trying in our own different places doing different things. I mean, Nature's Path has been a longtime friend of our family. We have a lot of characteristics similar as businesses. You mentioned Patagonia, which now is also in food a bit. I mean, there's countless others. Dr. Bronner's and that whole group's been a good friend, and we've done some advocacy work together. and I don't want to keep going, or I'm gonna miss people I should be given a call out to. But there are many, and Amy's is certainly by no means the only company oriented this way. But I would say that the group of companies doing work in this way, we're still relatively small compared to the food industry at large.
Yes, for sure.
So I invite more, even if they're much bigger than Amy's. I think they can learn and emulate parts of how we operate.
And do you think there's an argument? I mean, just like, for like, let's say like the skeptics out there, do you think there's an argument for like how doing good could actually be a good capitalistic move as well? Like, is there?
I think there is, and I think you can't do one without the other. I mean, in the long arc, I think you need to do both together, and they strengthen each other.
Yeah.
In the short term, can you maybe make a little more profit by basically not considering a bunch of externalities that your business model provides? Probably. But I think in the long arc, if you want to have healthy consumers, you're going to need to have a healthy economy and a healthy environment for people to live in.
Yeah.
If you want to be a food company, you're going to need to have robust soil health and quality to grow the ingredients you want to put in your product. And I think if you want to have a healthy culture, you've got to treat the people that work with you, with respect and with deep care. And so I think taken together, you can create a really powerful, and I mean, for Amy's to be a 40-year independent company proves, right? There's longevity to it. But I also think it's quite important, and I will say somebody whose indexes on the social environmental side, I mean, I've held those roles at Amy's. You can't also do that if you don't really attend to your margins and be a performance-oriented business. I mean, we also have debt, we have financial investments we need to make, and those things require us to also run, a really well professionally run and with strong execution. Yeah. So. And
actually, to that point, I mean, I'd love to kind of hear about some of the different roles you've had during your time at Amy's. Sure. And maybe ultimately, kind of, Andy and Rachel selected you to be CEO. I'm curious about that decision. Like,
sure.
Like, kind of the whole arc.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I've always been a person who loves sort of technology and creativity. I think I'm one of those sort of like, could put a foot in either way. There was, a time where I thought I was going to go into engineering architecture. That was like going to be, and as a kid, I loved building things. I loved creating things. I mean, I even joke, I made an electric skateboard out of a blender and an old skateboard deck as a kid, though it had an extension cord because the batteries didn't work back then, so it didn't go very far. But I've always had a bit of that orientation, and then I've loved people, I love creativity, I love food, and so I think I've always been gravitated to roles that have kind of a system level view to them and have technical components to it and creative components to it. Yeah. And I think it's kind of why I liked initially this consulting approach. And my background was consulting for a technology company. So we were using software to enable business processes. And a lot of what I did at Amy's initially was in that world. But what I appreciated, it wasn't just about a piece of code or a piece of enterprise software. It was actually, how does that software enable an outcome we're trying to do as a business? And what's the role of the person? What's the role of the tool? Yeah. And if we can ladder up a little bit, is there a more efficient way to do that, to get to that outcome, than maybe looking at a really narrow sort of functional view? And so even the early roles at Amy's, which included this internal continuous improvement project management role, and then I ended up leading the entire IT group, had a lot of that area of kind of like systems connects with technology, connects with people, connects with process mentality. So that was sort of like, I guess, the early experience there. I mean, I won't go through everyone, because I've had a lot of roles, but then I did get an opportunity to work on some of our international expansion and business development, and even was participated in bringing kind of our first drive-through business to life, which was fun too, right? It had a bit of that entrepreneurial side, and it allowed me to work really closely with Andy. I mean, it was Andy's entrepreneurial vision. I was working with him to bring it to life, but it was a great way to learn from him, to learn the way he thinks, the way he empathizes with consumers, and Rachel too, and so I think those experiences, because they were really important to the founders, also became great ways to learn and be mentored from them. So I think it's just a through line. I mean, I would say that if there's anything in common, is each role I was able to take offered incredible learning. Yeah. It allowed me to challenge myself, challenge my convention, and I think increasingly as I took on more leadership roles, it naturally required more thinking of the system than the function, which I think I was already somewhat wired to do, because I've always liked to understand the way things connect together, or understand deeper why they work in the way that they work. Maybe the part that recently, as I've kind of moved from the president to the CEO role, which I probably somewhat underestimated, but I'm learning, is how much now it's about a social process, not a technical process, right? Earlier in your career, you get to build things, you get to architect things, you're kind of tinkering a bit. As you get more into this level,
Right.
it's a lot about creating the conditions for your team to be successful, helping navigate complex choices where two things can be true simultaneously, but you still have to make a decision against it. And a lot of it is around, how do you create the right direction for an organization and make sure you have the right pieces and parts working against that direction, and continue to build that deep sense of commitment to what we're about, which you call it accountability, but there's also, I think, what I find even more effective is building a culture where people truly believe in the mission and the purpose of the brand and what they're doing, and believe that they have empowerment to help deliver that through the work that they do.
Right. And actually, it's a good transition. Like, I'm curious, like, what do you think is the difference between like a good leader and a great leader, or a good CEO and a great CEO? How do you think about that?
I mean, I think there's many companies that have different, the role has similarities, of course, and I think there's also, leadership is also in the context of the company and the mission that you serve. But I mean, as I've reflected a lot about it, and I'm still early in my leadership journey, but I have worked with some great coaches and have been trying to network with others. I mean, what's been true for me is recognizing a lot of what we manage as leadership is really looking at more of a polarity lens than a sort of like either or kind of lens. And so even this question you talked about earlier around like margin and mission, right? Like they can feel in tension, but you can also find a way where both can be true together. And I think good leadership requires you to think in that more complex way more often, and take the time to see truths from multiple angles, and then have a unique ability to see something even above and through that that becomes a good organizational choice. I also think it's important to focus on outcomes, not just activities, right? We all can we can create weeks, months, where it can feel like we did so much, but then when you step back and say, did I actually deliver an outcome that was really impactful? It is important to hold yourself accountable and your organization accountable to that. And I think the last piece, and I'm a big believer in kind of this combination of curiosity and vulnerability. I think leadership has changed a bit from a place where it used to be about a strong, top-down, assertive approach to one more where, creating in yourself continuous learning and creating in your organization continuous learning really is so necessary in how dynamic and fast-changing the world is. And I think also just focusing on realness. I mean, we're in a very odd time politically, culturally, where so much of what, we thought as real is now being debated. And yet I think we can be real to our teams and to ourselves. And I think creating a culture where people can show up as their whole self and show up and be psychologically safe is quite important. And again, it comes back to the idea of commitment. I think when you create that environment, you create a level of commitment that's far greater than just holding somebody accountable to a paycheck.
One of the things I found that's really fascinating is like how long people tend to stay at Amy's. I mean, you've been there 19 years. Noe, who is plant manager at Medford, like, I mean, decades, right? Like, and it's not uncommon. It's like very common, actually. I mean, I'm curious, like, what makes people stay so long at Amy's? I mean, it's incredible. Like in the Bay Area, obviously, Silicon Valley, people leave after like 3-4 years. It's like very common, but Amy's is this great culture where people stick around. What makes that true?
It's a great question. I think a lot of it goes back to a culture of care for each other, that there's a lot of mutual respect. I believe for many, we work on a problem they can relate to, and we have a product that they recognize has meaning. And I think that's helpful, right? When you make food that you actually believe in, it is engaging to others. And I think that a lot of this is also in Rachel. I mean, they are very humble, honest, real people. And I think they have cultivated both a culture, but they've also cultivated relationships with folks that have made it feel more than just a job for many. So.
And like, how does that translate to the culture you are trying to instill? Of course, you are the CEO now. You have your own beliefs and values. Like, what kind of culture are you trying to create at Amy's?
I think there's a bit of an and, right? Like the stakes of competition today are greater than they've ever been. There are more external and internal pressures on margin and performance than there's probably ever been. And even though it's maybe not because of our, having private equity shareholders who are demanding something, but it's more just the realities. I mean, affordability is on people's minds. The inflationary pressures are more acute today than they've been in my memory. So I think part of this is we are having to move more to this outcome performance-based culture. Like, it doesn't mean we have to lose the care
Yeah.
and the mission and the product quality, but we also have to be, more accountable to our financial results, and we have to be more predictable in a very unpredictable time, which sounds like a kind of tension point, which it is. But I think I believe it's quite important that we are very agile as a startup.
Yeah.
You have to be, right? But then you hit this stage of kind of where you start bringing in process, which can feel like bureaucracy, and you almost slow down too much.
Yes.
And I think we have to find this next evolution where we have really thoughtful process where it matters, but we actually speed up some of the agility to be more performative in a fairly complex time to operate any business, including a food business. So I think those are things I'm trying to bring in, maybe a little bit of, again, I think there's, how do you turn this beautiful history into a heritage and a story that is evergreen and can last for 40 or 50 years, which is a little different than we have a founder who will always be there for us.
Yes.
So it's never to discredit the founder, but it's how do we pull that into something that now could last 50 years, 100 years, well beyond my leadership tenure, because it's so embedded into the way we think and operate every single day. And you have this culture of real empowerment and accountability around both the mission and the financial results working together. So
it's a really good kind of transition to, I think it's often talked about in Silicon Valley how when the founder leaves, the companies suffer.
Yeah.
There's some exceptions to this, of course, right? Google is doing exceptional with Sundar Pichai, and Apple's doing exceptional with Tim Cook and things like this. But how did you I'm sure you and Andy and Rachel were very deliberate about this. How did you think about succession? And to your point, taking a business that's been around for 40 years and making it around for another 50 years, even beyond you.
Yeah. It's a great question. I think it starts with respect. You have to deeply respect what the founders did. They created the company we have the opportunity to work for, right? And they didn't do that maybe in the most traditional way. And how do you really learn from them and learn about the journey they went on and hold that to really high regard? And at the same time recognize that what got you there won't exactly get you into the future. And so how do you do both of that, right? Know the right places to pivot, adjust, and change, and the right places to preserve, honor, and respect. What I have seen externally, and I've seen in other companies, is that there can be a lot of lip service given to founders, but it's not always a ton of respect. It's kind of like, well, now the real experts are coming in, right? We'll show you how normal CPG does it. That was cute, but let me show you and I think you lose a lot of what made the brand special if you orient it that way, versus this beautiful story was created, this beautiful brand, this beautiful company was, and we can continue to learn from the outside world to strengthen that mission even further, right? It's I know I'm just saying those in words, but it really can extend into a culture where you're sort of blending the new with the old in a highly effective way, versus sort of replacing the old with the new from more of an arrogance or kind of time to grow up mode. And so for me, that's really important, which also includes continuing to use them effectively in the organization, right? Like have them show up for key culture moments, have them very involved in product decisions. They are the stewards of the quality. And I think lastly, really set up intentional mentorship far beyond with just me. Yes, it's important, but there are many folks in the organization who benefit, new and old folks, who benefit from that mentorship so that the continuity where it matters continues. So I think it can be done. And I guess maybe being as close to Andy and Rachel and witnessing them, I have just so much respect for what it means to found something. It is so hard. I don't want to say it's what's lesser. Running a large company isn't easy either. But the reality is that I don't think most big CEOs can found companies. I really don't. I think some founders can probably become CEOs, and I think some founders are great founders, and at some point they need to. They need to bring in an additional layer of support to continue their vision along.
I'm curious, for you now, are there key initiatives or objectives that you're really trying to steward as you kind of take on this new role?
For sure. I think we have to keep our innovation edge, and that's not just on product, though. Of course, it is. But it's also about being relevant to what people are looking for in their food brands today. So, for example, we're the first non-UPF certified frozen food brand, which means we're not using any ultra-processed food ingredients. And then I think, critically, we need to innovate internally so that we continue to have a sharp cost structure without compromising our food quality, so that we can be competitive in the market and continue to offer accessibility to our products. So I think the internal innovation is actually quite interesting. I mean, it's again part of the reason we met you all with Chef Robotics is we recognize that we need to continue to evolve the way we operate our manufacturing side of our business and hold true to the quality that makes our brand possible.
You know, and the chef story is also kind of interesting. Like, you know, when we were doing, we were actually at the time doing fast casuals. We were actually doing, kind of what you saw out there, we were doing a little tour at the beginning, doing fast casuals and ghost kitchens, things like that, and actually like some of the automation leaders convinced us that actually, guys, forget about this. Like, come to Santa Rosa, check out our plants.
Yeah.
And you see this like incredible opportunity for automation, where to your point, it's not like we have to change the food, but rather we can maintain the same process.
Yeah.
But kind of bring flexible automation to you. But of course, that was a bet. I mean, that was a bet for you. And you can imagine a company saying, no, like come back when it's stable, come back when it's hardened.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not even about chefs. Like, what allowed the culture to have that innovation?
Well, I think, you know, maybe taking a little step back, as we thought about kind of automation and where it makes sense for Amy's and where it doesn't make sense. You know, we kind of came up, and I wouldn't say it was very formal back then. It was more in casual language, but you know, there were some principles that I could articulate today from those early conversations. And I think one of them is we never wanted to fit our food to the automation. We wanted to fit the automation to our food, which meant if we built a beautiful recipe with a chef that honored a culture or a restaurant or a place where this meal came from, we didn't want to have to like ruin that promise to that product because some equipment manufacturer says, well, we
can't make it.
Well, sorry, you know, we can't handle a soft vegetable. It's, you know, it just for us never felt right. So we had this sort of ideas like you can't harm the food. I think we also recognized that, you know, we wanted automation that allowed our creativity and our agility across our assortment to coexist, right? We like coming out with new products. We like meeting new consumer moments. And a lot of the early generation of automation was so hard-coded that good luck ever launching a new product with it. You know, if it wasn't designed to do it, it wasn't ever going to do it. And so I think for us, this sort of idea of things that could be more modular and compartmentalized really made a lot of sense. And I think lastly for us, it was really important that we honored the people who made our food as we brought in change. You know, and that is that through, you know, upskilling and helping people learn new ways of work. Can we do it over time so just we can use natural attrition or just growth to help bring it in? But we never wanted to create an environment like where we tell a human you're equivalent to a robot. You know, you're not. A human always brings really unique capabilities. And so for us, how do we kind of blend the cultural and emotional part of this journey? So I think having some of those guardrails, if you want to make sense, but it also put some constraints. It meant a lot of the early generation of technology just didn't work. And so I think in some ways we've also, maybe back to your restaurant comment, there's always been a little bit of joking. It's like maybe we're more of a big restaurant that happens to freeze the food at the end than a manufacturing plant in just the way that, because I mean our kitchens are 3 to 4 times larger than a typical frozen food plant. Our lines run in a different way. You know, we make a lot more changeovers to different products over a period of time. So actually this idea of kind of cooperative robotics or robotics that can work with people was actually really intriguing to us. You know, and obviously that's grown a lot over the last couple of years. Right.
And I'm curious, like outside of like, you know, obviously chef and you know, our partnership is in the plating and assembly side of things. But like, where else do you see opportunity for automation, or you've already kind of automated in different parts of the manufacturing process?
For sure. I mean, we like to look at things that really, you know, are routine, rhythmic areas and parts. So things like, you know, packaging and palletization. You know, those are always really good opportunities, especially, you know, when it doesn't really matter what the meal is. Like putting it into a case is pretty similar. So certainly places where it's sort of routine, you know, manual labor, I think makes a lot of sense. I think moving materials around is another area that makes a lot of sense. And I think for us, you know, automation, obviously there's physical automation, like we work together, but there's also a lot of knowledge in automation. And I do think with just how fast AI and even the ability to kind of create software internally now with all the Claude Code evolution, it does offer a lot of opportunities to also rethink some of the way information flows around the organization, the way that people have access to information in the course of their work. So we're certainly looking at all opportunities. I mean, for us, it's important, you know, to do this with, first of all, with respect to the people whose jobs may be changing, but also it's a form of respect to our customers that if we can continue to, you know, to build an efficient way of making good quality food, we can allow more people to enjoy our food every day.
And actually, like, you know, like the AI revolution is a great topic too. Like, how have you kind of, you know, is it kind of experimental right now, or is it kind of like you found a couple of use cases where it's like, this is great, like we're going to use AI or LLMs?
Oh, for sure. I mean, as I already shared, I'm a little bit of a technologist at heart, so I've gone like way too far down the Claude Code rabbit hole personally. I've like developed now several apps, including like educational games for my kids and my own longevity app. So like personally, I took it on myself. I was like, this is something so new and different, and it's going to be so transformative. Like, how can I lead an organization without having some baseline understanding of how this works? So I mean, I've personally been on my own learning journey the last year, and frankly blown away every single day about what's now possible. We have areas, I would say, of our business, where we're working with really traditional, long tenured partners who are using AI more in the development of tools we already buy or we may buy. But we're also starting to experiment. I mean, we just did actually an internal hackathon for 2 days where worked with a great facilitator. We had a dozen teams, and we built some actually quite incredible tools internally that were really like fit for purpose to the unique way we run our business. And I think it opened up a lot of minds that what you might have had to go, to the outside for, you can start to experiment internally. And I think that was also pretty interesting to us. I mean, like all things, we also have to put in the governance, the data security. And, we can't all of a sudden have 2,000 employees all developing their own software and, and handle that complexity either. So I think we have to be thoughtful about where we deploy it and continue to make sure also, like, I mean, I just, without going too far down this, but like there are some times where I'll tell you whatever your LLM of choice is so certain, even though it's so wrong. So I think for us, we have to also make sure we're finding the right error and like kind of, again, error checking and accuracy and really making sure that, for especially more critical areas of the business, we're not moving so fast that we're creating other risk. But like anything, like back to this idea of polarity, like there's absolutely a cost to going too slow because we will get out-competed. There's also a cost of going too fast and making mistakes. And so I think for us, we're finding an intentional measured, somewhat aggressive pace to how we bring this to life.
One thing I'm curious about is like, was there anything surprising about how you introduced automation to your plans, or anything that was kind of not what you expected? And maybe kind of like, just to kind of put an example, like there's like this often cited example about Elon bringing like automation at the Model 3 line and like brought a bunch of robots. And then there was like integration hell, and he had to rip all the robots out, and they literally brought the Model 3 line into the parking lot to make Model 3. So, I mean, that's kind of a weird example where like, everyone thought that yes, robots from day one, but actually humans are pretty good. So like, has there been learnings for you around this?
We have definitely our own graveyard of projects that we thought would do something that they different. So I mean, it's there's a lot of factors to it. I think we have generally been more successful where we've built intentional like kind of trials and experimentation to help us along the way versus make a massive commitment that all of a sudden blows up on us. So I think managing the pace of change is really important. I actually think it also really matters to manage the communications and psychology within the business, right? Like, I'll give you a separate story, but I'll bring it back to Amy's. I was actually in San Francisco not too long ago with an Uber driver, and one of those Waymos went by, and I had this I don't know, I wasn't really thinking of flipping. I was like, oh, what do you think about those things? And he got like really sad. He's like, like I've been a taxi driver, now an Uber driver for 20 years. And every time I see one of those, I realize how worthless my life is. It was something like to that degree. And it really hurt. Like I actually took this moment. I was like, there's something wrong in that. Like we can celebrate this technology, but we also have to recognize that in some cases, this technology is disrupting people's livelihoods or disrupting their own sense of self because now they see themselves no different than a piece of technology. And like we have to own that as companies deploying this, as companies building this, that we need to pay attention. Doesn't mean we have to be apologetic or stop using it or be Luddites. I don't mean that at all. But I think we also have to find a way to transition into this world where we do respect the people whose roles are changing, and we find an important way to ladder them up to something that will be more impactful work. And I think if I take that back to Amy's, we've tried to really focus on roles and places that people actually don't really like to do. They might have to do it because we need to make the food that way. But I think when we help make their lived experiences better, we take safety risk out, we take repetitive motion risk out, we take redundant tasks out, and we honor that the people whose that job just went away with something better to do in an educational path. It can be really, really powerful culture builder and move away from a fear that my job is being lost to a place of, wow, I'm going to work for a company that's more enjoyable and better to work for. And so I would say that's probably one of the big learnings in this is don't forget and lose sight of the cultural parts of the change.
It was really I kind of had the same feeling when we first deployed some of these early systems to Amy's. Like, Noe actually went in front of the entire company, actually the entire plant, and said, "Look, like, guys, this is what's happening. This is why we're doing it. No job is being lost here. Like, labor shortage. Like, we're gonna have less redundant work," and everyone was actually excited, and they actually even named the robots.
Yeah, no, I know. That's so funny. I was going to mention that too. They all have names now.
It's pretty funny, right? It's cool. I guess I'm curious, like, Paul, for you, like, day to day, like, what does your like routine look like? It's just like what, like, how do you like, what time do you get up? Like, what does your routine look like? Because like, I think that's like, I think the day to day, these little things that nobody really talks about, actually are a really big part of what makes a great CEO.
Yeah, I mean, it is. There's probably parallels to like a significant athletic endeavor. If you don't, I'm a big believer. If you don't take care of your personal health, if you don't take care of the health of your family and your relationships with your loved ones, and you don't have a place in your community separate from your work community, you won't be as good at work. So I've really taken that to heart. So my days, most mornings I wake up at 5:15. I alternate between CrossFit and a master's swimming class I do. Try to do that 5 days a week to just start the day with really good physical energy and an outlet. Pretty much, 7:30 to 5:30, I'm fully in at Amy's. I think, those days depend. Some days I'm traveling to our plants or to our customers. Other days I'm in our office in Petaluma. And as I mentioned, I have a 7, 5, and a 3-year-old. I made a real commitment when I took the leadership role that I would never allow the work to compromise my relationship with my children and my wife. And if something had to go, the job was going to go, not the relationship with my kids and my wife. And I think, so far, I've been really good at honoring that commitment. So I try nearly every day. I mean, there are a few exceptions to be home and have dinner with my kids at 6 every night and really enjoy at least 6 to 8 reading books. I play guitar a little bit as a hobbyist. Spend time in the garden, but have meaningful at least 2 hours with them every evening. And then if I have to catch up on a few work things, I'll do it later in the evening. But it tends to be pretty consistent rhythm. And on the weekends, I try as much as I can to get out on a mountain bike, spend times with friends. I really do believe that you're a better leader when you also balance, your physical and mental and your family wellness together. And it gives you a lot of energy for the week so that, again, you can be focused and effective at work. And
are there any people that like really have like inspired you or have been really good mentors on the, obviously Andy and Rachel.
Of course,
but outside of that, have there been any great mentors, advisors, inspirations for you?
I've been so fortunate to have many over many years. Sometimes, they're the more traditional, they've been in a big leadership role. But, one I'll call out really specifically was a really wonderful man named Tom Mello. And he sadly passed away a number of years ago. But prior to that, of course, he was our longtime head of organic agriculture at Amy's. And I kind of shared a little bit I fell in love with Amy's. Well, I mean, I can actually go back to the moment quite clearly. He took me out to this broccoli field just outside of Salinas. This was just outside of Ventura. It was a different broccoli field. I remember it was 5:30 in the morning. I totally wore the wrong nice office shoes to this organic farm. Next thing I knew, we're trudging out in the mud, and he's literally on his hands and knees, and he's digging up soil, and he's you need to feel this. You got to get your hands in it. You got to and we're looking at, there's worms in it, we're starting to look at the root structure, and then he's chopping off a leaf of broccoli. He's you got to eat it fresh. It's it tastes so much better. And I don't know, we're just starting to explore this deep microbiological, this complexity, right, between the soil, the water, the health, the microbes, and just how it made this plant to be. And then I remember through the course of the day, we actually spent time with the folks who were in the harvest, and we ate lunch with them. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty tired, and I was it's time to go. He's no, we're going to stay and we're going to help everybody clean up and get all the tools to the vans. And just the honor he showed people who, frankly, for the most part, get forgotten about generally, which shouldn't be that way, but it is. I just somehow that moment of deep care and curiosity, coupled, I don't know why, I just think I fell in love with farming in a way that I never thought was possible. And I think it helped me really recognize that, again, you can do something with meaning and still do something professionally. And Tom, just in general, beyond that day, treated people with such generosity, no matter what walk of life you came from. And he would make you a CD of your favorite songs, and he'd like bring it to you at work. And he always had a carrot in his back pocket. Sometimes he'd just talk to me and like eat a carrot. I mean, he was just such a quirky, fun person. But I don't know why. Like, he just represented a whole different thought process to how you can carry yourself in business. So I give him weirdly a lot of credit, even though he may not know that. You know, I should have said that more to him while I had the chance. But you know, there's been countless others, and I think you can't lead a company nor find your best self without surrounding yourself with other mentors and people to learn from.
And like today, like who do you go to? Let's say you have like some dilemma.
Yeah.
Who do you like? Who's your board advisor? Who do you guys get help from?
So we have a great board of advisors. Matthew McCarthy, he's a former CEO of Ben & Jerry's. I mean, he and I talk regularly. We have Scott Brubaker, who comes from more of a finance transformation lens, and then Sri Rajan, who came from Bain Consulting, is actually the president of India for Bain. So a lot of experience in management consulting. So the three of them are on our advisory board as well as Andy and Rachel and Amy. So I talk to them often and regularly. So I mentioned I'm on the board of the Organic Trade Association, which has given me a lot of access to other food industry leaders. So I have my circuit of folks, folks I talk to. And also I've invested now for the last 3 years in a really, really great professional coach who helps me tremendously to have another forum. And then maybe one recent thing, I just joined YPO, or Young Presidents Organization. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but really nice group. It's all here in the Bay Area. It's a nice cross-industry group of individuals who are similarly kind of younger in the younger from age in the leadership journey. And there's been a lot with that group too that's been great to explore and support development.
One thing that is interesting is Amy's is in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So presumably like, and you know, perhaps that was just because Andy and Rachel were here, but how has that kind of affected you all? Like in a positive or negative way, right? Like being around tech.
Yeah, I would say there's probably a couple positives and one negative. I think that what's interesting about the Bay Area, right? Like we always think San Francisco is the Bay Area, which of course it's part of it. But you know, if you go up into Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, I mean, it's also a wonderful food area. I mean, great restaurants, great agriculture, great connections. This whole like farm to fork movement, I think, in many ways started in this area. So I think there's this really wonderful culinary tradition that we were able to learn from, and includes chefs and folks who helped inspire recipes for us. I think that the proximity of the Bay Area also is a place where there's really great innovation, and you know, you meet founders, you meet companies, you become inspired to see different ways of solving traditional problems. I say probably the only downside of the Bay Area is it's honestly just become very expensive. You know, and we don't have tech company margins. We don't operate in that same world. So you know, most of our food competitors are in very different lower cost areas of operation. So I think sometimes the cost structure part gets difficult. Hopefully we'll figure that out and build some housing eventually, and actually work on the affordability here. So I remain hopeful, but we love it. I mean, and granted, say Amy's is, you know, while we're headquartered here in Petaluma, you know, our plants are also in, you know, in addition to California, are in Oregon and Idaho, and we have a fairly distributed team of folks now who live across the country. So we also, which is nice, because we get, you know, their experience in parts that aren't California to help us learn from.
Are there any like pieces of advice you'd give to like, you know, your peers in the food industry, in the CPG industry, or even an entrepreneur starting off today? Like, what kind of advice would you give?
I think it's so important to truly stand behind the product that you're selling. It's not just a case or a marketing attribute or something. It's a meal in someone's life. Like you should feel very comfortable eating and consuming your food regularly and sharing your food with your closest friends, your kids, your family members. And that's the kind of a challenge I've always thrown out there. Is like, as a food executive, like, you know, if you had a nice group of, you know, visitors that come, would you serve your own food to them with pride? Like you should. I think that should be table stakes, right? I'll leave others to judge if all food is at that quality, but I have my own view there. And I think with that centering around who are you actually making your product for, it will lead to a lot of better decision making within your business. And I think that, again, it's important to create financial outcomes for your shareholders and yourself, but I think it's also important to create other outcomes too. And so I think it's worth for a founder to make sure most founders start with that in mind, but somehow along the whole VC private equity scaling journey, you lose it, right? So like, find a rhythm, a practice to not lose it. I think it'll serve all companies well to hold both true.
And as you think about like the future of Amy's, are there particular things that you're especially excited about?
We've covered some of it already, but I think, continuing to look at really innovative ways to make our food, I think is critical, and it's quite interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're small enough that we don't have to totally take the old paradigm with us, right?
Yes.
So I think that's really a fun area of innovation. I think continuing to, explore other forms of innovation of where are there categories or need states. As a young parent now, I have all kinds of things that are hard as a parent. So that's opened up an area of maybe potential long-term innovation. But continue to look at other ways where there's, something missing in people's lives today, and how can Amy's be a solution to it.
Yeah.
I think continue to build a really durable culture,
Business,
both around mission, but also around financial performance is really important. It's a harder time to be a food business today than it probably has been.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to, again, continue to be performative in that sense as well.
It is interesting, like, as you've seen during COVID, a lot of food businesses died, especially restaurants, right? But even manufacturing companies, they died. Amy's has persisted for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, some of the things we've covered around like culture and kind of really great quality food and things like this, but like, are there core things that you've taken away about how do you build a durable business, something that can stand the test of time?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna sound redundant here. I think going back to the idea that like creating food that you stand behind.
Yes.
And not, there's a lot of these words like design to value or value engineering, there's always some role for continuing to look at where you can do things more efficiently. I don't want to completely throw it all out, but there's also a tendency. It's like, well, if I take out a little bit of this butter, or if I take out a little cheaper ingredient, no one's going to know, and I do it. And then next year, I do it again, and next year I do it again, and then like 4 or 5 years, you can look back. It's like, this isn't even the product that I stand behind anymore. I think you have to resist that tendency and find that savings and cost efficiency in other ways. I think that's so important for durability. And I think it also just helps, honestly, to have the ownership structure we have, right? We didn't have an exit date in mind, so we're able to kind of make longer term decisions that might take more time to pay off than a typical horizon that at least some food companies are operating against.
At the same like coin though, on the other side of the same coin, there are these great restaurateurs and chefs and incredible culinary minds. They have brilliant food, but they're not very good at the business side. They're not very good at financials and branding and selling to these retailers or what have you, right? So I have to imagine it is food, but it's also some other things from the business side.
It is. You have to execute well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have to, I think that, someone who's great at food you have to know what you're not good at too, and so if you're really good at food, but you're not good at branding or sales execution or commercial strategy, then you have to bring in someone you can trust and who can work as a partner, peer, co-founder, or even an employee for you who can help compensate for that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it is harder today to scale a food company than it was when Andy and Rachel started. Right. They had this opportunity of a lot of small independent stores that over time built some scale, which could then translate to the next steps. I mean, today there's more consolidation. Yeah. It's more expensive to get into retail. Consumers are bombarded with so much information and marketing messages. And so I'm not certain you can totally do it in the way that Andy and Rachel did it 40 years ago today. Yes. And it may be that you do need to bring in, capital and partnership earlier so you can both hire the capabilities and enter the market. And I don't judge that whatsoever. Yes. I think it's just make sure you still hold true the reason you exist as you bring in that faster, more accelerated scale path. And I know many people who've built wonderful companies with that model. So again, just like all things, do it with intentionality. And somehow you all have resisted the private equity urge or the venture capital urge. Like, how have you resisted this? Like, you stayed true to that and somehow scaled very quickly. Yeah. Usually it's kind of like, oh, we scaled, but we had like... Well, we scaled over 40 years. So, quickly, I guess, is all in the eye of the beholder. But, it's a choice that Andy and Rachel made. And again, I think it forced a thriftiness and a really focus on only investing in what you critically needed. Yes. There are times where that was difficult, right? It took cobbling together used equipment and doing things maybe in a way that wouldn't be ideal, but it was a way that had to be done because of the balance sheet constraints. Yes. And so there's always trade-offs to it, right? Like
yes.
there were trade-offs to doing it in that way, and there were
Yeah.
benefits to doing it in that way.
Yeah.
But for them, I think, and Andy especially was important. I think he wanted to have that spirit of independence and
Yes.
be able to really chart a course that he believed in, and he found a way to do it.
And as you think about the food manufacturing industry as a whole, like how do you imagine it changing the next set of years? Obviously, AI is having a big impact, robotics and automation. Like, as you zoom out from Amy's to the broader industry,
Yeah.
how do you see it changing? What do you see it evolving? Things you're excited about, things you're concerned about?
Yeah, well, I'm really heartened by the deepening connection between food and health. I think we've known for a long time that food is probably one of the most, maybe food and exercise are the two most important things you can do for your own health. But there's more and more of a connection there, and the food part of the Maha movement. I'll leave the medical part outside because I don't want to talk about that part. But the food part, I do think food is being medicine. That real food with real ingredients should be the predominant way we eat. That's a really healthy trend, and I think it's one that's durable and will truly last.
Yeah.
I think you also have this, which I think there's some convergence actually between the food is health and the GLP-1s, which might be coming at it a little different way, but it's also kind of forcing people to think more about calories of consequence, that the food they eat should really be nourishing holistically and taste good if you're not going to eat as much of it, right? So you have kind of these two forces that are probably have some alignment around them that will continue to push the food system towards a better way.
Yeah.
I think things like what we're involved with around the non-ultra processed food standard is really important, right? There's a lot of things in packaged food that you would never consider cooking with at home.
Yes.
And the closer we can kind of align what you buy in the center aisles of the store with the way that a restaurateur or a home cook would cook, I think will ultimately lead to a healthier and more vibrant food system.
Yeah.
And I think that there's also some headwinds. I mean, I think affordability has really become an issue broadly. I mean, we live here in San Francisco, so we're probably generally on that like upper end of that K-shaped economy, and maybe it doesn't feel as the same here. But as I've traveled across the country, I think we also have to continue to make good food accessible to more people. And recognize that there's a lot of strain for a lot of folks around day-to-day living expenses, and we can't just continue to see the type of food inflation that we just went through last for too much longer. I mean, I'm also hopeful. We've talked about these things for years, but I think I really hope that organic will continue to grow and become a much larger part. I think there are ways similar to what we're talking about in the plants that we using technology in really smart ways, robotic weeders or other tools. We can continue to build a yield story out of organic farming that's comparable with conventional, but then move away from really excessive use of genetically engineered seeds and pesticides in the food system. And that will just lead to better water systems, healthier communities, I think probably better quality food over time. So I'm really hopeful that we'll see that innovation continue. And, I'm always excited with what the local restaurant world and local food systems do. I think there's always a really important place for that as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Paul, this is awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. Is there any other things that you think we should talk about, like that you'd like the audience to know?
I don't know. I feel like we've covered a lot. So, I think we're good. I mean, again, I just want to say I really appreciate the partnership. I think, again, we did talk a lot about Chef, but I will say that, you've allowed us to make food the way we want to make food and do that in a modern and efficient way. And it's really, again, I think the creativity of solving a problem we all had in a different way has been well received by us, and just want to say thank you for that as well.
Yeah, and thank you to you too. And honestly, like those early days, I remember we would show up at the plant, and Amy's really took a bet on us too. Like we didn't know, frankly. I mean, we were a lot of tech people. We didn't know about food safety. And Erin, who was there at the time, she would really grill us, and this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And then we make it better, and then we show it again, and that doesn't work, and we make it better. And then on the safety side, Steve would tell us all this feedback, and it just kind of got better over time. And then the QA team would tell us, and it just really allowed us to make a product that I think really, hopefully, adds a lot of value to you guys. So I think we're really grateful for Amy's. I mean, anytime I meet Noah, he's always talk about the reminiscing on the whiteboard about what if we had a robot that could slide onto a line and So super grateful, Paul, for the partnership, and thanks again for coming in.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.